Good afternoon, leaders, and welcome to the second section of January, where we are focusing and thinking about the schedule, the master schedule, and how it connects together with your co-teaching partnerships and your inclusion teams. So today we're still in that readjustment phase for 2022. You're still probably getting into the swing of things, especially with COVID. I'm sure COVID has ravished your buildings and your staff like it has for us, and we've just continued to stay the course and do the very best we can. So as you're continuing to recalibrate for COVID and getting into 2022, it's also time, and you've probably started doing this a little bit in October and November, just preliminary, but now it's time to really buckle down and think about what does that master schedule look like for next year. You're probably starting those conversations with your staff about who's coming back and potentially who you're non-renewing, and what does that look like for your whole building. So this year for us, in a 6-12 concept, we've really started to think about the master schedule a little bit differently. And today I want to talk about some of the ways that we've really focused on winning that schedule battle that's helped us increase achievement and think differently and alter our perspectives, if you will, about some of the placements that we do here at Bryan County Middle High School. I think the most important thing to keep in mind as you're creating the schedule is that the schedule is not logistics. Like, I never look at the schedule as a logistics game. I look at the schedule as one of the number one factors that drives our climate and culture in our school. And the climate and culture ultimately drives your achievement. So the creation of that master schedule and who you're placing together and your sections and how many periods you have and block and a red, white, or a 7 to 9, 8 period day, all of those things matter because they ultimately are driving that climate and culture, which then helps kids feel loved, be successful, love school, have fun at school, all of those things that we really want to focus on in order to create an awesome opportunity and environment for our scholars. So when I start to work with my team, I don't really look at it as logistics. I look at it as what's going to be the best for our school to enhance our climate and culture. So we kind of do three things. We always keep in mind that the path is not easy or straight, right? And so you've got to have a lot of different perspectives at the table. I bring my current cabinet team into the table and we get a lot of perspectives. I use my principal's advisory council to get perspectives. I never go at it with, what do you think about the schedule? What do you like or don't like? But instead I bring examples of what this schedule looks like and this schedule, and get some feedback based on the perceptions of those, as well as feedback from the schedule that we're currently running right now, which is a red-white. So it's an A-B every other day. So we're running 8 classes a day, or 8 classes a year, all year long. We went away from the semester block. So I would say that there's 3 things that really need to be high consideration for you as you're looking at your schedule and you're really keeping in mind special education practices. Because remember, if you think all the way back to our very first session, I talked a lot about how our focus on inclusion and co-teaching practices ultimately is what helped us increase and sustain that achievement. And that all was rooted in our design of the schedule. So you need to look at your current practices. What are you doing now that's totally working? And what are you doing now that is not working, right? Look at your research, your data, all those PLCs that you've done, all that informal scripting, talking to teachers about things. What kind of data and research does that give you in regards to what's working in your schoolhouse right now? And then think about starting to remake that schedule, tweak it, adjust it, but doing it with the data, your teacher partnerships, your special education teachers that have really grown, your general education teachers who have really shown capacity for that co-teaching partnership. You have to start looking at specific things, not just logistics. We are not looking for an easy path or a straight path. You're not going to find that, right? You've got to think about your school specifically, and what you're going to use to drive your schedule is not going to be what everybody else is going to use to drive their schedule. So you definitely have to keep that in mind. So the key components of scheduling and how this works. We do a variety of different ways here. You really need to think about, are you going to do some face-to-face, electronic? Do you have your SDI plan for your scholars? It is imperative that you are looking at your entire body of special education so you know what exactly you need to offer to your students who have an IEP. What kind of sections, how many sections, co-taught, collaborative, resource model, what does that look like? I typically here make a huge master plan. I think I have it with me here today, where I take a huge master plan and I put out everything that we do in terms of the needs of our students. And so then I start to think about our co-teachers. Our inclusion marriage is going to be the same. What's working, what's not. I go back to the data. So for that, I go back to that co-teaching checklist. I also use my TEKS mid-year conferences. So when I do my TEKS mid-year conferences and I am doing special education, I'm having those conversations with our special education teachers about, is this marriage working? Is the partnership working? Let's look at what the data says. And then I take it all back to the scheduling team. So those would be the key components of scheduling, and those are some of the systematic things that we kind of work through together. So I want you to think right now, in order to stay on track with your co-teaching work, you've got to create a schedule. Something that we've been super fortunate about at the lower school, our middle levels, I've had no turnover in special education teachers. Obviously, that is a huge advantage. When I went to visit Bleckley County schools, because they look a lot like us, their teacher turnover is very, very low. So they're at an advantage in terms of staffing when they're creating that master schedule. They've got those partnerships that have lasted and are working. And we don't always have that. And at the upper school, because we're in a new phase here, we're looking at a lot of new teachers coming in and out of the upper school. So we don't have the advantage that we have at the lower school with those relationships staying stable. So think about this for a minute when you're at your tables, and if you're thinking, your schedule determines the fundamental scholar experience, right? It's driving that climate and culture. It's providing those opportunities and experiences. So we are about those opportunities and experiences for scholars. So think about those partnerships that are really working for your inclusion practices, and make a note of that now, and think how you can either expand that to continue to have it work, model it so other co-teaching partnerships can see the benefit of that, or how you can take it next level with the work that you've been doing. Think about that now, and maybe pause as you think through some minor scheduling tweaks. And when you come back after you've done that, it's also important to remember that the right way to schedule is only by taking into account the needs of your school and your scholars and the data. That is where you are putting the focus in the right to learn, FAPE, giving everybody that free and public appropriate education. That is the only right way to schedule. There is no right way to schedule that's based on anything other than your needs in your school and your scholars. So as you are combing through that co-teaching piece, it would behoove you, like we've done here, what co-teaching practices have worked for us the longest, what marriages have stayed together, who do we need to change up? This is key. Who's going to monitor that change? Remember, anything that you're expecting, you have to inspect. And where we lose focus sometimes for us here is in the monitoring piece, particularly this time of year when things feel very heavy and busy. We're moving from winter athletics into spring, so we're kind of doubling in the both sides of the athletics. We've got TEKS mid-year, we've got COVID, right? The list is enormous of the things that we're trying to stuff on our plates. So it is very critical that as you're thinking about those inclusion partnerships on your schedule, who is going to monitor that? Because you want to have data to either support it continuing or support that change. Can you assign content in high school? Something that we are looking at for our schedule this year is, can we take each inclusion teacher, and can I have an inclusion teacher of math, ELA, social studies, couple in each area, and they can stay focused in that content. A key to the upper school scheduling for inclusion and co-teaching is minimum amount of contents that you can do. So be strategic as you are scheduling your inclusion teachers. Try not to load them with 4, 5, 6 contents, having them all over the building, but can you develop them and assign them in content? Can you team them in middle school? That's something to take into consideration. And do you loop? Can you loop your caseloads so you can make sure that in the upper school particularly, if I'm teacher Liz and I'm doing inclusion math, I'm co-teaching math, I better be teaching every single kid on my caseload. So being very specific in designing the master schedule, but then being specific in designing the caseloads for your teachers of record and for your special education teachers to make sure that they are actually teaching the students that are on their caseload is very important, and it's very critical as we work on that master schedule. So as we wrap up, there's a lot of content here when we're talking about scheduling, and it doesn't matter if you've done it for 5 years, 1 year, or 25 years. The scheduling is the biggest beast, I think, that we conquer, particularly at the high school. And when you're taking into account the needs of the students, the needs of your teachers, and the needs of your school, it really can be a three-headed monster that needs a lot of reflection and a lot of perspective thinking. So build your schedule based on needs. Write down and think about who has push in, who has pull out, where is that resource at, where are your support teachers located. If you can, create that common planning time for your contents. We were very fortunate to be able to do that this year. We will continue that for next year, but that was a strategic move on our scheduling. Make sure you're getting feedback in your PLC. And as we always say in every single one of these sessions, inspect what you are expecting. If you are expecting teachers to do A, B, and C, you're expecting parity, you are expecting them to sit and collaborate together, you've got to be monitoring that. And if it's not working, you need to be coming to the table to think about solutions so they can think about how to create what they need to be doing. So I'm hoping for February we're going to get into some real life classrooms here at Bryan County Middle High School where you'll be able to see a lot of co-teaching practices that we've really focused on. Our focus as we're continuing to build our master schedule right now is absolutely upper school and thinking about how we can align our inclusion teachers to a content. And we're also thinking about how we can create an effective resource room is part of our Tier 1 and our Tier 2 instruction. We want to have our resource room for our students with IEPs, and then we're implementing or piloting something called the Redskin Restart Room. And we're doing some SEL work in there as well. So I hope that you found this valuable and you found some tips about scheduling. You can always email me. And of course, I have this all on a slideshow PowerPoint that I will share with you as well. So stay the course. It is the work that we do is incredible. It is exhausting at times, but there is nothing better than serving scholars, serving families, and serving our communities. Have a great day, guys.